everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Stitch Sessions. Spring is almost here. I can just taste it. So this week, I thought we would work on a really sweet and cute project, these sweet spring flowers. So remember this, our all-around wreath? I purposely did it in this neutral tone so that way you could adorn it for any season and make it go with whatever theme you have going on at that time. So we've already done some embellishments for it in October. We've done some for Christmas, and now spring is coming up, so I thought working on some of these sweet flowers would be a great fun project to do. They're using easy stitches. So we're going to be looking at the single crochet and double crochet and some chains and slip stitches. What you might need to do is pack a little bit of patience because it can get a little intricate as we work into the third layer. So there's 3 layers of petals, but I think you're going to be really happy once you have the finished product. And this makes for great embellishment on a variety of different things like sweet little hats or on the lapel of a sweater or a jacket. You can add them to your crochet bags or any bag for that matter. So there's a lot of fun things that you can do and use these little flowers for. So I think you're gonna have some fun with it, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you how I created mine for my springtime themed wreath. So without further ado, let's grab all of our materials together and let's get stitching. Okay guys, let's get started here. So in order to make our really pretty spring flowers here, you can use any type of yarn that you like. In fact, this would be great for a scrap buster. And these 2 different flowers, I used like a chunky, bulky 5 yarn for this one. And this one was, actually they call this a medium 4 yarn, but I thought it was a little bit closer to a lightweight 3. So you can just see the difference in how they came out. And I like that actually because I like the idea of having them in different sizes, especially because I'm going to use this for my all-around wreath. So for this particular flower that I'm going to take you through, I'm actually going to use some of my cotton scraps. And actually, I really like the fact that I had some of this yellow left over because I just thought this combination is so springy and perfect. I just love it. So this is the Bernat Handicrafter cotton. It's a medium size 4. And I believe normally they recommend a 5mm hook. And I'm just going to use this one that I've got here, which is a 5.5mm hook, okay? And as always, you want to have a trusty pair of scissors and a darning needle for sewing in any ends later on. So let's get cooking. So we want to begin by creating a cinch circle. So in order to do that, you're going to take your yarn, and I always like to keep the short tail in front. I'm going to wrap it around my 2 fingers here, and then I'm going to insert my hook just between there to kind of pull up a loop here, okay? And that is the first loop I'm going to use. See, and then I just kind of took that finger out because I want to chain 1 to secure the circle. Okay. I also have a little basic tutorial on creating a cinch circle, and you can either click it here in the cards above, or I'm going to put it in the description down below. So you just want to make sure your short tail is out here because that's what's going to be used to cinch your circle. Now you can certainly use a chain 4 ring, but I like the fact that it cinches in the center shut nice and closely. So like I did with this one at the end, I really just cinched it shut, and it just kind of creates this nice little rosebud feel in the middle. Okay, so we're going to begin by chaining 10. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, once you've got a chain of 10, what you're going to do is you're going to go back into your cinch circle and you're going to do a single crochet. And in the beginning, it's going to feel a little funny because nothing is really kind of solid yet. Okay, so you've got something that looks like this. You've got a little loop hanging out here, and then you've got your cinch circle, and I like to cinch them together. This is technically your first petal. Now, in my flowers in particular, I've just made them 5-petal flowers. I just like the way it looked. You can make yours 6 or 7, however many you like. Next up, we're going to do the same thing again. You're going to chain 10 and then single crochet into the center of the circle. We're going to do this for a total of 5 times because, like I said, I'm creating 5 petals. Okay, so I'm going to do that one more time with you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, and again, I go back into the cinch circle and I'm going to place a single crochet. So I'll just insert right into the space of that circle, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. And it takes a little bit of patience for this stage because, like we've said, everything is kind of trying to find its spot. Whoops. Okay, and I like to just kind of push them close together. So you can see now, hopefully you can see, we've got 1 and 2 petals of our flower made. Okay, so you're going to do that 3 more times into the cinch circle. And I'm going to meet back up with you once you're finishing your 5th petal. So just pause the video there, finish your 3 petals, and I'll meet back up with you then. Okay, so I've just finished my 5th petal and I have this jumble jamble of a mess, it looks like, for my flowers. So I'm just going to, whoops, take this out so you guys can see. Okay, so there's my cinch circle. That's my little slip. And these are my 5 petals. So I just want to make sure they're all facing the right side. They're not twisted. See, that one was twisted. Just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little short tail and I'm going to cinch my center shut. See that? And you can pull it a little bit tighter if you want. And now you can see that it's formed the center a little bit more pronounced. And there's your 5 petals. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go into this very first chain. So now we're going to work into all the chains of our petals, okay? Some people work into the space, but in this case, I'm working into the chain. So I'm going to start into the very next petal here, and I'm going to slip stitch into that very first chain there. Okay, just slip stitch. And now what I'm going to do is into each of the next 8 stitches, I'm just going to single crochet. So I'm just going to insert into the next one. So that's 1, into the next stitch. That's 2, and 3. This is 7, and this one is 8. So that should leave me with 1 chain left, which is right there, and it will stretch out a little bit, so don't panic if that happens. And into the last one, I'm going to slip stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to slip stitch just like that. Okay, so now you can really see that your petal has a bit more shape. So I started with the slip stitch. I single crocheted for 8 stitches and I ended with a slip stitch. That's going to give you your 10 chains. Remember we did chain 10? Now what you want to do is we just go next door into the very next petal here, and right away into that first stitch we just slip stitch into that one. And then we repeat the same process all over again. You just single crochet into each chain for the next 8 chains, and then into the last one we slip stitch. So each petal begins with a slip stitch and ends with a slip stitch. And I'm down to my last one again, so I'm going to slip stitch. And now I just go to my neighbor here, and in the very first chain, I'm going to slip stitch into there and continue on with my petals. Okay, so I'm just going to take this out. So you can see my first 2 petals now are actually starting to look like petals. Okay, and don't worry if the center loosens up a little bit. That is okay, and we're going to use that to our advantage in a moment once we finish all our petals. So continue on, do the next 3 the exact same way. Slip stitch, single crochet 8, slip stitch. Go next door, slip stitch, single crochet 8, slip stitch, okay? And I'm going to meet you up when you finished your 5th petal. Okay, so I have now finished all of my petals. So you can really see the flower taking shape. And in fact, if you wanted to make a super quick and sweet little applique, you could be done, because it just kind of fills in nicely just like that. So you could just leave your flower like that. But because we want to add, or I do, I wanted to add some little extra texture. We're going to add another couple of more rows. I call them rows because they're kind of stacked one on top of each other. So even though this is in the round, this is the first row. Yeah, I guess we could call them rounds. So I'm going to take you into round 2. Okay, so we've slip stitched here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create the next layer up. So we've done that slip stitch there. Now what I want to do is I actually want to slip stitch down. I'm just going to insert my hook behind there. And I'm going to slip stitch kind of where close to the stem center. Okay. And so what that does is it's going to bring me a little closer to the middle here. And from here, I'm now going to chain 3. Okay. Then I'm going to go over into the next side here. So we slip stitched into the inside edge of this petal. See where that little opening is? I'm going to slip stitch right into there. So that's the first stitch, or the first chain on the inside of that petal. And hopefully you can see that. I'm going to pull that through, and I'm going to slip stitch. I will chain 3 again, 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm going to go into the next inside stitch. So I'm just going to find, so I don't want to go here because I've just worked inside that petal. I'm going to go into the next petal. I'm going to find that chain 1, which is right about there. Don't worry if you hit or miss where it is. You might go 1 up or 1 down. But somewhere close to where the stem is, because you want to stay as close to the center as possible. And you're going to slip stitch to join there. Okay. And again, 1, 2, and 3. So you should be able to see that this is now a new layer being formed. I'm now going to go into the next petal, and the very first chain stitch right there, I'm going to slip stitch into that. Okay. Oops. that, chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to go into the inside edge of this next petal. So we just worked this one here. Now we're going to go into this one, the very first chain stitch, which looks right about there, and I'm going to slip stitch. And I've got one more to go. Chain 1, 2, and 3, and it should take me back to the beginning. So we've got 1, 2, so I'm counting my loops, 3, 4, and this is our 5th one. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go right back into where we initially came out of. Just going to insert your hook there. So basically we're at the base of the very first loop we created. And you're going to slip stitch to close up the second round. Okay, I'm just going to pull this out to hopefully get you guys to see. So we've got our 5 petals from our base layer. And now what we've done is we've created the base for our second layer. So you see we've done chain 3 spaces, and we should still have 5 of those. Okay, so what I was aiming to do is to get these loops to sit in the spaces between the petals. So I didn't want the loops to be exactly where the petals are, because otherwise then it would get hidden. So hopefully you can see that the loops are shaping towards the spaces. Okay, so this is not the layer, this is just the base of the layer. Now we're going to create the next level of petals. And it's going to be just a wee bit different, but not by much. So this time what we're going to do is we are going to slip stitch into this very first space here. So you're going to insert your hook, slip stitch, and you're going to chain an additional 2. 1 and 2. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use double crochet stitches, and we are going to double crochet 3 times into this space. So you're going to yarn over, insert, pull through 2, and pull through 2. So in total, this is the 3rd one. And the chain 2 will count as 1 as well. And I chained 2 instead of 3 because I purposely wanted it to curve upward like that. So you've got your slip stitch, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Now we're going to chain 2 again and slip stitch back into this same petal. So see how that space was created there? You're going to go in there and slip stitch. And what this does is this just solidifies your very first petal on the inside. And hopefully you can see that it's going to sit, see how it sits in between the other 2, and that's kind of the goal we're going for. So that way you get a really true, so when I did this one in the blue, same idea. So that way you get that true layered effect. And in fact, you can see it even better actually in this one. So see, I made sure that these white petals sat nestled in between where the purple is. And then of course we did a 3rd layer. Okay, so that's the back, and you can see those were the initial loops that we started with, which are just as pretty. And that's how we layered it. So I'm going to do this again with you guys. I love to make sure that you guys have the concept down well. Okay, so now I've slip stitched into that first petal, but now what I want to do is I want to get into the next petal space, which is right here, that's chain 3. So I'm going to slip stitch into that space, and that's going to take me over there. Just going to move the yarn over. Now we can officially work out of our next petal. So we're going to chain 2 to begin. 1 and 2. Then we're going to place 3 double crochets into that space. So we pull through 2, our second one, and our third one. And now we're going to chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch back into the base of our current petal. So we're going to go right into that space, and we're going to slip stitch, and that will close off our next petal. Okay, and sometimes I just like to move these out of the way when I'm working. Okay, and then you find your next chain 3 space, you slip stitch into it, into your neighbor here. And then we begin the process all over again. Okay, so you chain 2, 1, 2, and then 3 double crochets into our petal space. Okay, so that's it. Chain 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2, slip stitch to finish. Go to your neighbor here, slip stitch into that space, chain 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2, slip stitch to finish. Okay, so I'm going to let you finish that, and so now you can see that they're starting to sit nicely layered on each other. I'm going to meet you at the end of round 2, and then we'll take you to round 3, and we're almost done. Okay, and I'm just finishing my 5th petal here, so I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to go and slip stitch into there to finish off that petal. And so the second round is done, or the second layer as I like to call it, and I hope you can see that. I know it's all one color, but this is our base round. So the first 5 petals, we turn it over, and see these ones have a little bit more of a squared off look. They look a little bit smaller. They should sit a little bit shorter. And see these ones, a little blocking too, they'll stand out a bit more. Don't worry about that tail right now. So this is our second layer on top. So hopefully, there we go. Hopefully that's a little bit easier to see. So you can see a little second layer on top. And now we're just going to do a third one that's a little bit shorter, and it's going to snuggle everything in a little bit more. So we're in the home stretch. So it's going to get a little bit cozier, we'll say. So now what we want to do is, you see how our second row of petals, we've got this little join here, this little post, I'll call it. We are going to slip stitch around that. Okay, so you're going to slip stitch around that post, and that's really going to snuggle your last petal in. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2. So we have 1, 2, and now we're going to find our next post, which is right there, so you can see it through these spaces, and we're going to slip stitch around that. Okay, we're going to chain 2 again, so you can tell we're going to do this all the way around. We're still going to have 5 chain spaces, so this is my next post here. So I'm just going to kind of go around where these 2 petals meet. Okay, and it won't necessarily be in a stitch, although if you end up going through a stitch, that's okay too. Just be careful that if your yarn is splitty like mine, that you get all the loops. Chain 2 again. I'm going to look for my next post, which is right here, around there, and slip stitch. Whoops. Let's see, that's what happens when you have really splitty yarn. Where am I here? Yeah, so I only want to work with my second row petals. I don't want to grab the other ones inadvertently, so I'm trying to really be cognizant of that. And chain 2, and then find my next post, which is right there.
and slip stitch around there. And you can see that that center is now really forming. And we are going to do chain 2 one more time. 1, 2. And we're going to come back to where we started. There's that first post. And actually, I'm just going to go right into that chain space. And slip stitch. Okay. So I just pull that out for a second. So it's created this little inner ring, and by going around those posts, it's actually snuggled these petals in a bit further. Okay, so I've been pushing these guys behind, but they're there. So that way they can kind of start bunching upward. Okay, I know maybe I should have done different colors so you guys could see, but I think you should be able to see that okay. So that's layer 1 where we have the big space. Layer 2 is where our petals are a little bit more squared off. And layer 3 is our chain 2s at the base of every petal. So now we are going to go on to creating the final row or round of petals. So we're going to do something similar to what we did in round 2, but instead of double crochets, we're going to use single crochets. So I'm going to just chain 1 here to get me established. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 single crochets into that little space there. There's my second one. And then I'm going to slip stitch into that same space. Nice and easy. And then I'm going to go into the next space. So you just want to pull that up. So there's my next chain 2 space. I'm going to slip stitch into that. And the slip stitching in between is what gives the petals shape. I'm going to chain 1. And I'm going to do my 2 single crochets. 1. And 2. A lot of times I'll just push these other petals back to get out of my way. And then I'm going to slip stitch to end off that petal. And now I will go into the next space right there. It's a little bit tighter now, so just be patient. I'm going to slip stitch to, whoops. I'm going to slip stitch to establish myself in there. I'll chain 1 and repeat it. So this is what you're going to do for the final round of petals. So you can see that they're much smaller. And now you can see the layering. So slip stitch, 2 single crochets, slip stitch. Go into the next one, slip stitch, 2 single crochets, slip stitch. You're going to do that into all 5 of your chain spaces. So go ahead and do that. I'll meet you up at the end, and we're pretty much good to go. I'll see you back here shortly. And here I am in my last little petal. Whoops. My yarn's getting away from me. And now I'm going to slip stitch to finish that last petal. And of course, you know what? This last round is going to be trying because everything is so much more squished. So try your best not to get frustrated and hang in there. I know some of you beginner crocheters, this can easily become a frustrating project, but just be patient. You'll get there. So there I have it. I finished my 3rd round. So you can see it really kind of snuggled in nicely. So if I just flatten that out, that just gives it that extra little bit of texture. I love how this one came out, especially in the cotton yarn. Very, very nice. Very happy with that. Okay, so I am done. So what I want to do is I actually am going to snip my yarn. And then I'm just going to continue to pull that loop out just like that. Okay, and I'm going to tie that. And now what I want to do is I'm going to feed this back inward. I'm not going to kind of push it out to the side here. Actually, I lied. I am going to feed this one just in there and behind. Just basically burying it so it goes right down the center and through the back. Oops. Just like this. Oops. I think I picked up one of the strands there. There we go. So now it's fed through the back. And I'm just going to feed it just a little bit over here. And then this tail, this was actually for my cinch. I'm just going to pull it a little bit to really make sure it's nice and secure. And now, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tie a knot or two. Just going to see how it looks. Yeah, we're good. Oops. And I'm going to tie a second one just to make it nice and secure. So depending on what you're going to attach your flower to, you might want to leave these two long tails like this. It'll help you sew it on if you're doing it as an applique, maybe on a hat. This would make for a sweet applique on a child's hat or a bag or anything like that. Even a scarf or some mittens, it would be really, really cute. So you can leave your tails or maybe even a longer tail, just sew it on. I'm going to place mine on my all-around wreath, so I don't really need it to be long. So I'm going to snip mine short. And there we have it, guys, your sweet little flower. So now I'm going to add it to my collection of spring flowers, and I'm going to place it on my all-around wreath just in time for the spring season. And I am super happy with that. Now, of course, you can make as many of these as you like, depending on what you're using yours for. Like I said, I'm using mine for my all-around wreath. You can make it in different colors. Like I actually layered it, this one with 3 different types of colors with each layer, or you can make them solid like I did these. The sky is the limit. So I just like to be able to provide the general structure of the pattern, and you can of course adjust it to however you like it. It is an art after all, and it's all about putting your personality into it. But I'm so happy with how that came out. I hope you guys had fun making this little project. I always absolutely enjoy having you come along on my crochet journey. It gives me such joy to share this with you all. And I've been able to chat with some of you. You've been kind of sending me comments and a couple of DMs on Instagram. Please do keep them coming along. And of course, I always adore seeing how many of your projects have come out. So make sure you tag me at the Stitch Sessions. And if you're enjoying some of these tutorials, please do subscribe if you haven't already done so. I upload a new tutorial every Wednesday at 10 a.m. And sometimes I throw in some bonus videos on the weekend as well. So that will be a good aid to you if you like these tutorials, that you'll know when we're coming up. And press that notification bell so you get notified when I'm uploading. And if you have any friends that you think would find these useful, helpful, and bring them a little bit of crafty joy, please do feel free to share this. As always, it is my pleasure to have you coming along. In the meantime, guys, have an amazing day. Happy crocheting and take good care.